Hey, this is Zach with musclesandveggies.com. And today I wanted to take you guys through a short segment program that I developed for reversing type 2 diabetes and reversing type 2 diabetes naturally by building and using muscle. So, this is obviously just a portion of what my program actually involves. The program itself is based on three-pillar approach, and that three-pillar approach is entirely surrounding pillar number one is food, pillar number two is building muscle, and pillar number three is fasting. So, as we go through the slides here, we're going to talk about four different ways that we can reverse insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes just by using the second pillar of the program, which is building and using muscle. So, number one, muscles can become insulin resistant. Now, what's important for people to know here is sedentary people who develop type 2 diabetes often become insulin resistant before they are diabetic. In fact, it's more like everybody does. But what we're going to talk about here is how glucose enters the bloodstream, and the first place that the body wants to put it is its biggest storage mechanism for glucose, which is muscle. If you are a very sedentary person, you haven't done anything all day, you haven't depleted any space in that muscle to store glucose. So muscle cells store glucose in the form of glycogen, okay? They're the first place that glucose wants to go is into the muscle. Muscles that haven't been used or that have been sedentary for a very long time atrophy or lose size and growth and the ability to contract. So what happens then is you can't store as much glucose into the muscle, and eventually over time, if it becomes insulin resistant, the muscle will stop taking up glucose altogether. And then you run into a big problem. This link up here at the top, inactive muscles stop taking up glucose. This will show you guys the scientific studies, my resources on the information. So glucose then goes to the liver to create in fat cells in a process called lipogenesis. So if it can't go to the muscles, guess where it's going? It's going to your liver to get converted as fat. Okay, so going into number two, muscle is the greatest oxidizer of fat. So if our cells are full of fat and sugar and basically everything is crammed into these cells, right? The more we use our muscles, the more mitochondria we build. The more mitochondria we build, the more energy we can make from the fat cells. Basically, the more we clear the energy from the muscle cells and the fat cells, the more insulin sensitive we are. So this is where a low carb diet comes in, because if we're not giving the body a whole lot of glucose, guess where it's going to metabolize energy from? You guessed it, your fat cells. So the more insulin sensitive we become by burning fat out of the fat cells, the more we reverse type 2 diabetes. Okay, this brings us on to number three. Muscle has the greatest storage for glucose. Okay, muscles hold roughly 200 to 300 grams of glucose, depending on how large you are and how muscular you are and how much you use your muscle. So if we store 200 to 300 grams of glucose in the form of glycogen compared to our liver, which is the second storage mechanism of glucose, which only holds about 75 to 100 depending on the size of the person, then we can actually grow our storage capacity to put glucose when it is in the blood, because it always is there. However, how much we eat carbohydrates and starch and sugar dictates how much glucose is sitting around in the blood and having to be processed in either glycogen or storage as fat. So we can actually, by using our muscle and growing our muscle, we can increase our capacity to store glucose as glycogen. So when we do take in some glucose, it immediately goes to the muscle. It never even thinks about going to the liver, and it never even thinks about getting converted into fat. So this is a really, really important point. The more storage you create in the muscles, the more insulin sensitive you become, and the faster you clear blood glucose from hanging around in the blood. Now, that brings us around to number four. The bigger the muscle, the bigger metabolism. So understand what your BMR is. Your BMR is the amount of calories that you burn doing nothing at all. Laying in bed, how many calories you expend is what your BMR, and that stands for basal metabolic rate. The more calories we burn, the more we give ourselves chances to burn fat for fuel out of the cell. So this is why they say lifting weights and working out boosts your metabolism, because it does. Basically, the more we burn fat out of the cell, the more insulin sensitive we are, and also the more weight we lose, and all these good things start happening. So even less sitting and more low-level activity, walking, hiking, cleaning the house, yard work, gardening, all these things can improve energy expenditure and raise your BMR. So how do you get started? Start slow, focusing on just using, not abusing your muscles yet. So we're just activating muscle tissue first. This is not self-torture. We're not going out and mutilating ourselves with crazy workouts. When you start this program, what you're doing is just activating muscle and building that mind to muscle connection. Okay, if I'm going to do a push-up right here that you see right there on the screen, I'm going to use my chest muscles to activate this lift. Okay, same thing with the back row. I'm going to use my lats right here to pull these dumbbells as my row. Focusing on using this connection and building this connection between the mind and the muscle does so many benefits. All right. Start at home. You don't have to run out and buy a gym membership and buy a gym bag and drive 20 minutes to the gym and change clothes and put in your earphones. And, people have made this into a stressful event instead of just having fun moving your body. And these are all things we can do at home. We don't need big commitments to do that. Most gyms make you sign a contract and want to ring you into a commercial loop just to work out. So don't get caught up in that. Start at home. Which brings me to my next point. Focus on using functional movements, which means learning how to use your body weight to activate these muscles. So we're going to focus on 4 different areas: pushing, pulling, squatting, and core. You can basically, in these 4 movements up on the screen, you can basically activate full body tissue when it comes to your muscle by using workouts like this that are very functional. And you can do them at home. All you need is a set of dumbbells, sometimes a pull-up bar. So the number 4 is set a routine. Just don't wing it. Set a schedule that's going to work out on certain days that you're going to do for a certain amount of time. And which brings me to my next point here. Muscles and Veggies, we offer type 2 diabetes health coaching. So for more information, check us out at musclesandveggies.com. And if you liked this video, please share it with someone you love, someone who has type 2 diabetes, someone that could benefit from this information. For more information like this, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned to musclesandveggies.com at the blog, putting out weekly blog articles to try to spread the education that type 2 diabetes is curable, it's reversible, it's not chronic and progressive. Thank you very much for watching this video.